The Pacific waters churned beneath USS O'Brien on March 27, 1945. Off the coast of Kerama Retto, the destroyer's sleek silhouette cut through the morning mist. At 376 feet long and bristling with 6 5-inch guns, O'Brien was built for battle. From the bridge, Captain Raymond Outerbridge studied the horizon, while her radar arrays scanned the approaching dawn. The constant sweep of the radar beam painted a picture of empty seas and clear skies. Suddenly, the first blip appeared in the corner of the screen, and another, and another. 4 Japanese aircraft, flying low and fast. The destroyer's battle station's alarm shattered the morning calm. O'Brien's guns thundered to life. The first aircraft disintegrated in a burst of orange flame, pieces scattering across the waves. The second spiraled downward, trailing black smoke, before vanishing beneath the surface. High above, American fighters pounced on the third, their guns blazing, until it too disappeared into the sea. Through the chaos, the fourth aircraft emerged from the clouds, its engine screaming as it aimed straight for O'Brien's bridge. The destroyer's guns roared in a desperate defense, but the aircraft kept coming. As metal met metal, the impact tore through O'Brien's radio room, igniting ammunition and fuel in a massive explosion that ripped her superstructure apart. As smoke filled the bridge, Captain Outerbridge grabbed the helm. With the superstructure in flames and his crew in peril, he had only moments to execute the one maneuver that might save them all. The savior of Normandy. USS O'Brien sailed out of England before dawn on June 5, 1944, as part of the assault phase of Operation Neptune, the D-Day invasion. Fast and heavily armed, these versatile Sumner-class destroyers were built for anti-aircraft, anti-submarine, and surface warfare during World War II. Weighing over 2,400 tons and equipped with 6 5-inch guns, torpedo tubes, and radar, their key role was protecting larger vessels and providing crucial gunfire support in amphibious assaults. The mission was to support the Normandy landings by neutralizing German coastal defenses. But for Captain Raymond Outerbridge and O'Brien, it was anything but simple. On D-Day, June 6th, the ship took off from Utah Beach, facing choppy waters and a lingering storm. But it wasn't the weather that kept the crew on edge. What they saw on the horizon as they stood watch was a different kind of storm. The storm of gunfire, artillery, and carnage unfolding on Omaha Beach. At Omaha, the 352nd German Infantry Division, arguably the most formidable of the German coastal defense forces, was ready. From the heights above the beach, the Germans had a clear view of the advancing landing craft. The beach was littered with bunkers, pillboxes, and machine gun nests, defenses that were virtually impervious to the small arms fire and mortars that the men in the landing boats could muster. The men of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions had no chance. From the moment the ramps of the landing craft hit the sand, soldiers were torn apart by machine gun fire, mortars, and artillery shells. As Ray Woods, a radar man aboard O'Brien, grimly recalled, quote, "We were off about 4,000 yards from the beach. There, we watched the annihilation of the first wave." The destroyer's crew stood helpless, watching the massacre unfold, knowing that they were powerless to intervene from this distance. For the men on the beach, there was no relief, no escape. By 9 a.m., Captain Outerbridge had seen enough. The O'Brien was positioned some distance offshore, but after watching wave after wave of soldiers being torn apart by German guns, Outerbridge made a decision. Without orders and without immediate support, he steered O'Brien toward the shore. The ship's engines roared to life, cutting through the water with purpose, drawing closer to the chaos below. The crew braced themselves. As O'Brien closed in on the beach, the ship turned sharply, aligning its port side with the cliffs above Omaha Beach, where the German positions were entrenched. From this close range, O'Brien's gunners began to open fire. The 5-inch 38 caliber guns roared as massive shells screamed toward the German positions, sending plumes of dirt and debris into the air as they struck their targets. The shockwaves from each blast rocked the ship, but the crew remained focused, reloading and firing with lethal efficiency. The first salvo struck a German pillbox, its concrete wall splintering under the force. The ship's gunners, watching through the spotting scopes, made adjustments with every shot, ensuring the rounds were hitting their marks. The next volley tore through the defenses on the cliffside. the massive shells creating craters as they struck near or directly at enemy positions. After a brief period, O'Brien received its first radio call from the army units pinned down at the foot of the cliffs. They were trapped, unable to advance or retreat. They begged for O'Brien to adjust its fire and raise the shells higher to avoid hitting them. The USS O'Brien's crew quickly adjusted their aim, raising their fire to cover the army soldiers below, pushing the Germans back with every shell. The gunners on board knew that every shot fired could tip the scales of survival for the men stranded below. Captain Outerbridge wasn't done yet. As O'Brien neared Pointe du Hoc, another critical objective, the German positions came into view. O'Brien's crew could see enemy soldiers fleeing from their positions, trying to escape the devastating bombardment. The ship's guns tracked them, and in a series of quick, well-aimed volleys, the destroyer wiped out the enemy positions one by one. A building that had served as a command post was obliterated in seconds, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. As the battle raged on, O'Brien's guns relentlessly hammered the German positions, weakening defenses and allowing the Allies to push forward. Thanks to Captain Outerbridge and O'Brien, the tide began to turn. After D-Day, USS O'Brien pressed on through the storm of European war, but the Pacific loomed ahead, where fiercer battles would further shape its legacy. Scuttling the Ward. On December 7, 1944, USS O'Brien, still under the command of Captain Outerbridge, joined Task Group 783 in support of the U.S. Army's 77th Infantry Division. Together, they launched their amphibious assault against the Imperial Japanese Navy at Ormoc Bay, Leyte, in the Philippines. By 6 a.m., USS O'Brien was already firing on enemy barges, barracks, and coastal guns. The ship's gunners unleashed a furious barrage, sending shells crashing into Japanese positions, bursting into smoke and debris with every hit. As U.S. infantry began landing at 7 a.m., O'Brien continued its bombardment, providing cover fire to suppress the coastal defenses. The beachhead was quickly secured, but Outerbridge knew the job wasn't done. He ordered the ship to shift course, heading along Ormoc Bay's northwest shore in search of more targets. Within minutes, O'Brien's crew found camouflage shore batteries, hidden barracks, and scattered barges, all of which were swiftly neutralized in a storm of steel. Then, at 8 a.m., a new threat appeared on the horizon, a swarm of Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, their radar blips flashing across the screens of American ships. These weren't standard bombers. They were repurposed for kamikaze attacks, carrying up to 1,000 kilograms of bombs in their internal bay or underwing mounts. The skies erupted as American anti-aircraft batteries opened fire. O'Brien's 5-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose guns roared to life, tearing into the incoming planes. Flak exploded in the air, sending some of the bombers spiraling into the sea in flames. Others pressed on, undeterred by the firestorm. One Betty weaved through the anti-aircraft fire, its twin engine screaming as it plunged toward a converted troop carrier. The pilot locked on, aimed with terrifying precision, and then, with a final surge, the bomber slammed into the ship's side. Explosions erupted as fuel tanks detonated, sending flames licking up the hull. Black smoke billowed, choking the air as the vessel was immediately crippled. Captain Outerbridge's orders arrived. O'Brien was to assist the stricken vessel. When Outerbridge read the message, his stomach dropped. The ship in question was USS Ward, the same Ward he had commanded 3 years earlier during the Pearl Harbor attack, the very ship that fired the first American shots of the Pacific War. Now, 3 years to the day, he was being ordered to aid the burning wreck of his old ship. Without hesitation, Outerbridge barked the order to make full speed ahead. USS O'Brien surged forward at a blistering 27 knots, cutting through the water with ruthless speed. Fire was spreading on the Ward, and every second counted. As O'Brien closed in, flames shot high, scorching the ship's superstructure, and the air was thick with burning oil and metal. Outerbridge ordered O'Brien to stay 30 feet away. The heat was so intense, moving any closer would risk catastrophic damage. The fire grew more uncontrollable, and the Ward's ammunition magazines were close to ignition. For hours, O'Brien watched helplessly, unable to intervene. With the Ward beyond saving, Outerbridge received new orders: scuttle the ship. It was a bitter command. The very ship he had once commanded was now a smoldering wreck, its fate sealed. With a heavy heart, Outerbridge ordered O'Brien's guns to fire. The first shell screamed through the air, striking the ward with devastating force. Another shot rang out, then another. Each impact sealed the ship's fate. As the final rounds fired, the ward sank beneath its wounds. USS O'Brien stood motionless, her crew silent, grim-faced. Captain Outerbridge stood on the bridge, burdened by the weight of his orders. The task was complete, but the cost, emotionally and mentally, was something Captain Outerbridge would carry for the rest of his life. Kamikaze's bullseye. March 27, 1945. USS O'Brien, now part of Task Force 54, was positioned off the coast of Kerama Retto, preparing to support the aftermath of the invasion of Okinawa. As the sun barely kissed the horizon, a chilling sight appeared on the radar. 4 kamikaze planes, slicing through the low cloud cover, headed straight for the ship. O'Brien's anti-aircraft guns exploded into action. The air was thick with fire as the 5-inch and 40mm batteries rained down explosive rounds. The first 2 planes were blasted out of the sky, their burning wreckage spiraling into the sea. A third was downed by American fighter planes above, but the fourth, an unseen threat, was determined to finish its mission. Just after 6 a.m., the Kamikaze plunged from the low cloud cover, its engine screaming through the morning air. The plane sliced across the sky, its path unmistakably aimed at O'Brien's superstructure. The crew barely had time to react as the aircraft closed in, its nose dipping toward the ship with determined precision. In a split second, the Kamikaze crashed into the ship with a metallic scream, a blinding flash of light igniting the moment of impact. The explosion threw Captain Outerbridge off his feet, and the bridge was engulfed in a maelstrom of flames and twisted metal. The plane's impact tore through the radio room, right behind the radar compartment. Ray Woods, the crew member in the radio room, vividly remembered the explosion. Quote, "The blast threw me to the deck, and everything was a cloud of black dust. I tried to see through it for some light, but all I saw was some cables hanging down from above. The cables were red hot, burning his hands when he grabbed them. Disoriented and covered in debris, Woods fought his way out of the wrecked radar compartment, stumbling toward the main deck, where he collapsed. A blanket was draped over him, but he could hardly comprehend the full extent of the destruction. USS O'Brien was ablaze, fires tearing through the central superstructure. The ship's speed was cut to 10 knots, and Captain Outerbridge turned the vessel into the wind, hoping the shift would help fight the raging inferno. As fires spread, some crew members, trapped by the flames, jumped or were thrown into the sea. Those stranded in the water, desperate and struggling for air, were eventually rescued. Drenched in black smoke, many feared the ship would sink, but miraculously, O'Brien held afloat. The battle to control the fires raged on, but slowly, the crew managed to bring the flames under control. From the wreckage. Despite severe damage, O'Brien limped toward Kerama Retto. As the wounded were transferred to the hospital ship, radar man Ray Woods finally saw his reflection. His face and hands bore the marks of his escape through burning cables, but he had survived. 52 of his shipmates had not. Another 76 nursed their wounds. O'Brien underwent repairs at Mare Island Naval Shipyard during the summer, followed by training at San Diego, California. As World War II drew to a close in August 1945, she patrolled Japanese waters with the Third Fleet. The destroyer then joined Task Group 17 for Operation Crossroads, supporting the first post-war atomic bomb testing at Bikini Atoll. When Communist forces surged across the 38th parallel in 1950, O'Brien returned to service. Her guns, which had once defended Normandy's beaches, now protected United Nations forces along Korea's coastline. During the Battle of the Buzzsaw, her accurate fire saved countless Marines from being overrun. The 1960s found O'Brien in the Taiwan Strait and off Vietnam's coast, where her guns provided the same precision support they had delivered 2 decades earlier. In 1972, after 28 years of service spanning 3 wars, USS O'Brien was decommissioned and struck from the Naval Vessel Register. The destroyer that had survived so much would serve one final purpose, as a target ship for naval exercises off the California coast. where she slipped beneath the waves one last time.